Someone asked if you're better now, and you said yes. Of course you said yes. It was the kindest thing to give them, and the easiest thing to say. But there was a small, quiet moment right after the word left your mouth, when you understood something you had no way to explain to them, that the thing they were asking about had never actually closed, that you had learned to speak about it in the past tense long before it agreed to become the past, and they were waiting gently for you to be finished, as if grief were a room you walk out of, as if the door had a handle on the inside. So you learned to say it. I've moved on. I'm in a better place with it now. It was for the best. You learned the whole vocabulary of the person who is healed, and you wore it well, because wearing it well was a kind of mercy. For them and for yourself. Because there is a version of you the world can sit comfortably beside, and it is the version that has finished, the one who has closed the account and moved on. People love that version. They exhale when they meet it. They stop watching you so carefully, and so you gave it to them the way you'd hand someone a settled bill. It's done, it's paid, you don't have to worry about me. And it worked. That's the thing no one tells you about the mask of closure. It works. It buys you back your ordinary days, your dinners where nobody lowers their voice, your birthdays where nobody looks at you sideways to check. It lets you be a person again instead of a wound other people have to be careful around. But a mask you wear long enough stops being something you put on. It becomes the face you show even when no one is looking. And there were nights, you know the ones, when you caught yourself performing closure to an empty room, reassuring no one, telling the dark that you were fine, that it was behind you, that you had grown from it, as if even you had started to believe the story you built to keep other people calm, as if you were grieving it twice now, once for the thing itself, and once for the right to still be grieving it at all. There is an old idea, older than the language we have for it now. The people who studied the soul the way others studied metal believe that something in us has to darken before it can change. Not break, darken. They had an image for it. A thing going black, going still, as if dying on the table. And in the way Jung read those old texts, that blackening was not an accident of the work. Read psychologically, it can resemble a descent the mind does not simply choose and cannot easily rush. They called that operation in the old language the Mortificatio, the making dead, the bringing low. Jung never said grief itself was Mortificatio, but if we borrow the image as a lens for loss, the resemblance is hard to miss. Seen this way, the darkness isn't a problem to be solved. It isn't the part of grief you're supposed to get through so the growth can start. Psychologically, it can be experienced almost as if it had an intention of its own. And what it seems to ask is almost unbearable in a culture like ours. It asks you to be still, to wait, without the scheming of the mind that wants to make it better, wants to feel good now, wants to be done. Because the ego has a timetable. It always does. It wants the loss processed by a certain date, filed, learned from, converted into something useful. And grief, more often than not, keeps a shape and a schedule of its own and does not consult you about either. If there's one honest thing to say about the dark, it may be that it takes as long as it takes, and there is no version of you clever enough to negotiate the terms down. We have built an entire culture around refusing this. We treat sorrow like a wound that has gone on too long. We have professionalized the exit from it, sold the 5 steps, promised the clean break, taught each other that to be healthy is to be finished. And underneath all of it runs a quiet, cruel assumption that a grief which lingers is a grief that has failed. That if you are still in the dark, you must be doing the dark wrong. But some things in a life are not meant to resolve. They are meant to be carried, and the pressure to be done with them, that pressure is not the cure. Sometimes it is the second wound. Picture a man on a night train. Late, the carriage nearly empty, the overhead lights low and yellow, the country outside gone entirely to black. He is somewhere in his 40s, in a dark coat, and he has been traveling long enough that the motion has stopped feeling like motion. And in the window beside him, there is a reflection. His own, half-lit, unclear, held in the glass against the dark, rushing past. For most of his life, he has done one of two things with a reflection like that: turned away from it, or turned to meet it head on, to fix what was wrong, to have the whole thing out. Tonight, he does neither. Tonight, he simply lets it sit there, beside him, in the glass, not looking away, not staring it down, just letting the thing he never became ride alongside him for a while, the way you might sit beside an old companion on a long journey and say nothing at all. The window doesn't ask him to be better. It doesn't ask him to explain. It only holds the shape of him, the one he is, and faintly, underneath, the one he wasn't, and carries both of them on through the dark. So let's say it plainly. The thing the whole culture is arranged to keep you from saying, the part of you that never closed, is not a malfunction. It is not evidence that you failed to heal, or grieved too long, or loved the wrong thing too hard. That open place is doing something. It is the last room where what you lost is still real. Think about what closure would actually cost. The total closure we're sometimes told to want. The kind that asks the memory to stop having any claim on you, to surface and move nothing in you at all. That kind of closure would ask a strange price. You would have to agree that it no longer matters. That the thing you carried, the ache you never quite set down, the wanting that outlived its object, were never quite worth the weight of their absence. It is not peace. It is a small forgetting. It is the quiet undoing of the fact that something was once so alive in you that it's not happening still moves you years later on a train in the dark. And maybe that is why it won't close. Not because you're weak, because some part of you refuses to sign the paper that says it didn't matter. That refusal isn't your failure. It might be the truest loyalty you have left. A refusal to pretend that what mattered didn't, that you were never once capable of caring that much about anything at all. Nobody owes you an ending, and you don't owe anyone the performance of having reached one. The next time someone asks, gently, whether you're past it yet, you can let the question fall without answering it the way they hope. You are allowed to still be in it. There's no statute of limitations on a loss. There's no date after which your grief becomes indulgent or dramatic or a thing you should have handled by now. And I want to be careful here because this is exactly where a video like this usually turns. This is the moment where you expect me to tell you that the darkness was secretly a gift, that the loss was really a teacher, that if you stay in it long enough, it will crack you open and something will bloom. That's the story everyone wants to arrive at because it makes the pain retroactively worth it. It converts the wound into a lesson and lets everyone go home. I'm not going to give you that because the moment the dark becomes useful, the moment it becomes the raw material for your growth, you've lost the one thing it was actually protecting. Not every darkness is on its way to becoming something else. Sometimes, still is just still. Sometimes, in grief, the black image doesn't need to be turned into a promise of gold. It is simply the shape the loss takes now, and it asks only to be held, not harvested. You don't grow out of the loss, up and away from it, leaving it behind like a smaller version of yourself. If anything, you grow around it. It stays the size it always was. You become the larger thing that can carry it, not the person it happened to, but not the person who's finished with it either. Somewhere in between, still here, still holding it. And that is not a failure to heal. For some people, healing looks less like leaving the grief behind and more like growing large enough to hold it. So stay, just for now. Don't reach for the meaning yet. Don't tie it off. Let it be unfinished, and let that be allowed. People will ask what the unlived life was for. What was the point of carrying it all this way if it was never going to happen? And maybe the honest answer is that it wasn't for anything. Not in the way we mean when we ask that. Not a lesson, not a stepping stone, not a wiser you assembled from the wreckage. It doesn't have to have been useful to have been real. But if it was for anything at all, perhaps it was only this. So that some quiet part of you would not quite forget how much you once wanted. How fully you were once willing to want a life, a person, a version of yourself. Enough that its absence still has weight. I won't tell you that wanting was secretly a gift, or that the ache is here to teach you something. Maybe it isn't for anything. It's just that the grief that won't close can feel like the last place that wanting is still kept. Not proof of anything, not a lesson, only the thing itself, still here, refusing to be tidied away. The man on the train doesn't reach the end of the line and step off, healed. He just rides a while longer beside the reflection of who he wasn't. Neither fleeing it nor fighting it now, just letting it be there, in the glass, in the dark. You don't have to close the door. You were never the one who was supposed to.